sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, and welcome to My Sister's a Therapist. This is a podcast that involves two women who are sisters. One of us is a stand-up comedian, which is me, and one of us is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and that's Laura Ryan.
Hi, I'm Laura Ryan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, but my main credit is sister to seriously smart aleck Virginia Jones.
Laura, on this podcast, we take turns researching a topic and presenting it to the other one, like a warm round of camembert cheese just to be dealt with. This time, it's your turn to come up with the topic, and it's my turn to eat the cheese. What do you got?
I have a listener email that has inspired this whole episode. If you are interested in having an episode based on a topic that you find interesting, shoot us an email at hello@mysistersatherapist.com. Dear Laura and Virginia, longtime fan here. Thank you both so much for this wonderful gift to your listeners, and congratulations on 110 episodes.
Thank you.
Thank you, listener. So I've been twirling my hair repetitively since childhood. Hair twirling always brings me comfort and helps to center me. I've never pulled out my hair, but have been twirling my hair so much that it's gotten to the point that I'm doing this for up to 5 hours at a time when I'm super anxious. That's a lot of hair twirling. Now I have a lot of pain. I have clicking in my shoulder and numbness and shakiness in my arm and shoulder because of my repetitive hair twirling. And as I age, I'm concerned that I will continue to damage my shoulder and eventually will be unable to use my arm anymore. Is this considered trichotillomania? Is there anything else that I can do to stop it? Thanks, your most dedicated listener, Sharon L. Thank you, Sharon L.
Well, Sharon, for one thing, I'm super sorry. Laura has talked to me about trichotillomania in her clients, and one time just straight walked up to a comedian I am acquaintances with and said, "You have a problem and I can help you stop it." And she said, "Oh, great, we should record this for a podcast." And Laura thought, no, I want to do it for money.
She was twirling her hair during her whole comedy set.
It makes her hair stand up from the side of her head in a great big shock. And she's a lovely lady, but her hair is always pretty messed up.
When I see that, I'm like, oh, wow. If you can't manage it for a 5-minute set on a stage, then that means you're doing this all the time and you never stop. And no, I didn't want to do a podcast with her. I would have been willing to do a session with her for no money.
So here's the Mayo Clinic's definition of trichotillomania. Trichotillomania comes from 3 Greek words: tricho for hair, tillo for pull, and mania for she's a maniac on the floor. And she's pulling hair like she's never done before. Trichotillomania is also called hair pulling disorder, and it is a mental condition. It involves frequent, repeated, and irresistible urges to pull out hair from your scalp, eyebrows, or other parts of your body. Trichotillomania is part of a group of conditions known as body-focused repetitive behaviors. For some people, trichotillomania may be mild and can be managed. For others, the automatic or deliberate urge to pull out hair is too much to handle emotionally. Some treatments may help to reduce hair pulling or eliminate it entirely. The word was coined in 1889 by French dermatologist François-Henri Alopeau. It was established as a distinct psychiatric disorder by the American Psychiatric Organization in 1987. The first record of trichotillomania is by Hippocrates in the 5th century BCE, who noted a woman who, quote, groped about scratching and plucking out hair, unquote, during periods of grief and depression.
Sounds scientific. Have you had any experiences with trichotillomania in your life?
I had a friend at my last job who would pull out her hair in times of stress. And she showed up at work one day and she just shaved her head. She was like, sometimes when it gets this bad, I just have to shave my head and start over. I, one, felt awful because the stress of the job was part of the stress that was causing her to pull her hair out. And 2, just knowing that she had lived with this her whole life and that every once in a while, I just got to shave my head and move on.
The first time I ever encountered someone with trichotillomania was in 6th grade. There was a really popular girl that went to our school, and she left for the summer and she came back and her hair was really weird. I realized, oh, she's wearing a wig. And I thought that she'd maybe gotten cancer or something like that. But then I found out that over the summer, she'd pulled all of her hair out. So trichotillomania came to me professionally via hypnosis. People are just trying to figure it out. And I have found actually hypnosis is a really effective treatment for trichotillomania. Unfortunately, a lot of women believe that it's just something that you have to deal with and it's your life. And I remember going to a trichotillomania support group. When I was there, the general vibe was this is just something that we have to do and live with for the rest of our life. And I'm here to say to Sharon and anyone else who's listening, you don't have to do this for the rest of your life. This is something that you can have an impact on.
But you know how it is to be a person. You start doing something or you can't remember not doing it. It's easy to assume this is just who I am.
You can do it. It's possible. It's not easy, but it's possible. We're going to go through the DSM criteria for trichotillomania. It's a recurrent behavior, repeatedly pulling hair or picking skin. A BFRB is a body-focused repetitive behavior. And recently, I called out Virginia for her BFRB of picking her lip skin, just something I've noticed before.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I have a lot of people who come to me for skin picking, biting nail beds.
I'm having an all over body memory when I was working with the homeless population in Los Angeles. It's stressful to be homeless. And so anything that you have is probably going to get worse. But there was a man who was picking at the skin in his leg and he just bled through his sock. He needs a medical kit. He needs clean bandages. And they talked to him about it. And he was like, this is just how I am. And it made me so sad.
Yeah. The first part is that it's recurrent. You repeatedly do it. There are attempts to stop. You repeatedly try to decrease or stop your behavior. There is distress or impairments. With Sharon, she's talking about how she's got shoulder clicking. She has all this pain in her arm, numbness, and all these other things. The behavior is causing clinically significant distress or impairs social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. What I hear a lot from clients that I have with body-focused repetitive behaviors, family members are grossed out by it. They have a hard time at work, suppressing because they're stressed. This is their lowest hanging fruit for dealing with difficulty. Some clients I've had just purely bite their fingernails. Other clients I have will bite their nail beds, pick at the skin on their hands. So that's where you move from nail biting to body-focused because you can't stop. You're doing it all the time. This is something that I say to my nail biters because that's another population I work with a lot. If you're trying to quit smoking, don't buy cigarettes. But your hand is always
there.
And so then the final thing is the exclusion that this behavior can't be better explained by another medical condition or mental disorder. It's difficult because it's harder to quit. Usually people that I work with started doing it when they were toddlers. You can't buy a pack of cigarettes when you're a toddler.
Not anymore.
No. And you can't get your hands on any wine when you're a toddler. You just have to work with what you got, which is your skin.
In the Middle Ages, trichotillomania was sometimes attributed to supernatural forces or demonic possession. The way they would treat it is they put you in an asylum. So let's all be thankful that pulling your hair or twirling your hair does not put you in an asylum. University of Oxford, body-focused repetitive behaviors. BFRBs are the collective name for problematic picking, pulling, or biting of skin, hair, or nails. We all do these things a bit because they are normal primate grooming behaviors. But some people experience ongoing powerful urges that make it very difficult to stop. BFRBs are underrecognized and underestimated in terms of the distress and functional impairment they can cause. Individuals can spend decades of their lives blighted by behaviors they cannot control, for which there is little or no understanding or support available.
They're happening because it's a way to manage anxiety. It's an OCD behavior. We'll talk about that too. There's sort of a physical release when you pick at a scab. I remember I had a client in the past who I suggested that she put magazine covers on all of the mirrors in her bathroom because she would sit in there and go into almost a trance. You're not aware of time passing. You're just super, super focused on whatever it is. So she would have maybe a small pimple and she would get in there with her tweezers and just go to town. By the end of her session, when you're in there for 2 or 3 hours, come out and all kinds of stuff has happened. I don't like the fact that it says there's no understanding or support available. There is support available. I think hypnosis is a really good way of dealing with it. It's rewiring your brain to start thinking about other ways to deal with problems. Normal behavior or a disorder. 2 BFRBs are officially recognized in the Diagnostic Manual for Mental Health Disorders, the DSM-5. Trichotillomania is hair pulling disorder. Dermatillomania or excoriation disorder is a skin picking disorder. In both cases, the criteria for diagnoses include persistent pulling or picking that feels difficult to control and a clinically significant level of stress. Other BFRBs can cause similar distress but are not currently recognized. These behaviors are often confused with or assumed to be an aspect of another diagnosis. BFRBs share features with anxiety, self-harm, trauma, OCD, and addiction, and are more commonly observed in people with autism or ADHD, but also sometimes occur in the absence of any other condition.
The interesting thing about hair twirling specifically is that it can be seen as a flirting behavior because one person may be doing it to seek attention from the opposite sex and another person is doing it for self-soothing and fidgeting. There's a sitcom right there. I thought she liked me, but in fact, she had OCD.
I think it's a little bit different when you're twirling your hair as a way to try to be appealing to men. It's to look childlike because we want men to think we're kids. And you just do it for a couple seconds. When you find that the person is doing it for 5 hours, that's when we know it's a BFRB and not just a fun flirtation.
Answering the question on the table. Is twirling your hair as a habit a symptom of an underlying condition? Kathryn Watson says hair twirling can have some side effects. These may include hair breakage and weak strands, tangled and knotted hair, bald patches and hair loss, or split ends. Split ends is almost the least important of these things, but also obviously our listener is having some repetitive motion injuries with it. Hair twirling can be a sign of obsessive compulsive disorder. If you have other symptoms of OCD, your hair twirling habit might be a part of your condition.
Other symptoms of OCD include upsetting thoughts or impulses that repeatedly occur, repetitive acts or rituals that temporarily relieve the stress or anxiety, symptoms that last more than an hour per day and interfere with daily life. Hair twirling is a form of stimming or self-stimulation. Other examples of stimming include biting your nails, drumming your fingers, or jiggling your foot. Stimming isn't always related to autism, but some stimming behaviors can be related to a diagnosis of autism. If you want to stop twirling your hair, the treatment you will choose will depend on the reason that you're doing it. Talking about the ritual, I remember one client that I had in the past had a very difficult job, and she would come home, sit in the same chair every day, and pull her hair till there was nothing left to pull. She said there was this halo of hair around the chair, and she said she would basically go into a trance and lose all touch with reality until she couldn't find any more hair to pull.
I did find something on the internet, and it has to do with aggravation with a man, so I'm going to read it. This guy goes on a date with a girl. The girl thought the date was really the worst thing that had ever happened to her. Did not respond to his texts or calls following up. He wrote her a 1,600-word email discussing his disappointment regarding her decision not to respond. And he said, "You played with your hair a lot. A woman playing with her hair is a common sign of flirtation. You can even do a Google search on it. When a woman plays with her hair, she is preening. I've never had a date where a woman played with her hair as much as you did." And he is seeing that as a flirtation. He doesn't understand that she is trying to self-soothe in a very stressful situation.
She's not, in fact, preening for you. She is trying to self-regulate because she hates you.
Why does pulling hair feel good? Trichotillomania is a perplexing condition where the act of pulling hair gives a sense of relief or satisfaction. This may seem odd at first, but there's a complex interplay of psychological and biological factors at work.
Biological responses and endorphin release. When the hair is pulled, the body may release endorphins, which are chemicals that make us feel good. This response is similar to the pleasure one might feel after exercise or eating chocolate. The release of these chemicals can create a sense of euphoria that reinforces the hair pulling behavior. This is in a lot of ways similar to self-harm.
It's low-key cutting.
It's very similar to cutting. That's why they say self-harm, because you can also burn yourself.
Right.
I've had other clients who do that. Ultimately, you're releasing a chemical in your body, and I'm not a doctor. If I were, I would say, I think what's happening is your body is in pain or discomfort, then endorphins get released to try to soothe the body. You get hooked on that feeling.
It's sounding like it's pretty good. Should I start?
I would say no, because the price tag is way too high. I always think about this one client that I had many, many years ago, and she was a beautiful woman with this long, lustrous, thick black hair. And I remember her coming to me, and I was surprised because she said she was coming for trick, and I didn't understand it.
But your hair looks great.
Yeah, you have tons of hair. But then she revealed to me that, in fact, the first third of her hair was a sewn-in wig that even her husband didn't know about. She wouldn't shower with him or go swimming. And she went to a special hair salon that specifically did this work. It might be pleasurable, but the cost is very, very high.
My last hairdresser had a woman who came in for that kind of treatment, and she is very self-conscious about it. She doesn't want anybody to know. Yeah, I get it.
Well, I think part of being a woman, we have all these messages about hair. And I think this woman particularly, she was a very feminine woman. And I think it really messed with her sense of self.
I spent the week at a work convention. So it's a lot of people who know each other a little and see each other twice a year, once a year. It's funny. I was walking past so many conversations about hair. One woman would say to her compatriot, "Oh, I haven't seen you with long hair before." Like, "Oh, you changed your hair." Yes, I cut my hair. What you do with your hair, how you style your hair, how you wear your hair is a huge part of femininity and how we feel about ourselves, our self-expression. I think sometimes to our detriment. When TikTok went into quarantine, which is when I started really getting into it, there were all these 15-year-old girls who were like, "I'm going to really rebel. I'm going to do something really shocking." And the most shocking thing they can do is shave their head. I saw all these girls shaving their head in quarantine. And she's like, "I'm not going to be judged. I'm not going to go to school. I'm just going to do the most shocking thing you can think of." I think that possibly there might be more interesting things about you as an individual than what your hair is, but not everyone agrees.
It's a big part of cultural femininity in Western cultures. If you have a problem like Trick, it really messes with your feeling of feminization.
Right. And your feeling of attractiveness.
Your value as a human being. Women are only here to be judged and enjoyed by men.
Habit formations and brain chemistry. Over time, the brain starts to associate hair pulling with relief and pleasure. This creates a cycle where the individual is compelled to pull hair to achieve that same feeling. It's a bit like how people might reach for comfort food when they're stressed. The brain's reward system plays a big role in reinforcing this habit.
As we've talked about before, every human being is an addict in some form or fashion. And I think trichotillomania specifically, and any body-focused repetitive behavior, it starts when you're really young. People don't just start twirling their hair or picking at their fingernails when they're 25. They start when they're 3 or 4. We've talked about this a little bit so far in these articles, but usually having an anxiety disorder is comorbid with having a BFRB as well.
Because it's happening when you're a child, like you said earlier, you have very few methods of self-soothing, of calming when you are a child. You can't do the things that adults can do. Go out and drink alcohol, drive a car really fast, or buy yourself an expensive video game and play it for 40 hours. You are limited to your body and the things that you can control.
The psychological reasons and coping mechanism. Beyond the biological reasons, there are psychological factors at play. Many individuals with trichotillomania use hair pulling as a coping strategy because it gives a sense of control in situations where they might feel powerless. Thinking about being a very young child in an abusive household. Like you said, there's not much that you have control over or much that you can really do to help yourself. You focus on what you got, hands, skin, and you've got hair.
I remember feeling this way as a child and feeling like I was in a bad situation and there was very little that I could do about it. Thankfully, my direction tended more towards reading and fantasy, going inward, escapism, being creative, drawing, being in my head a lot. Do you remember some tools you used when you were little?
I sucked my thumb until I was 12.
It's true.
My parents had to install
a retainer
in the roof of my mouth. And then my mother shared with me that she had also had that problem and had also had a retainer in her mouth. There's a genetic component to all this too. I had a client who was a hair twirler. She didn't pull, but she was a twirler. She noticed that her 2-year-old son, he was twirling as well, but he had bald patches because his hair was so fine. That was her motivation for really getting in and taking care of this, because she said, he's doing it because he's watching me. And I've noticed with most BFRBs that I always ask when the person comes in, so did you have a parent who also did this? 99% of the time, the answer is yes. There's a biological part, but part of it is just your environment.
Who is at risk for trichotillomania? Trichotillomania can occur at any time, but generally appears between 10 and 13 years of age and can last a lifetime. According to the TLC Foundation for Body-Focused Repetitive Behaviors, 1 in 50 people experiences trichotillomania at some point in their life. And that's a lot of people.
It is. You've done skin picking. I've done thumb sucking. My son bites his nails. There's just a lot of different ways to do it.
While the number of people that this condition affects in late childhood or puberty is roughly the same, women are 80 to 90% more likely to experience this disorder in their adult years. Studies have also shown that hormonal changes that naturally occur during the menstrual cycle can trigger flare-ups of trichotillomania. It's very stressful to be having a period. For some people, it's a life-changing amount of pain. Because of the society we live in, you still have to get up and go to work.
When I've spoken with other people who have this as part of their practice, we talk a lot about women's anger. Society tells women that they're not allowed to be mad. What do I do when I'm filled with rage, but I'm not allowed to express it in any obvious way. I internalize and I figure out different ways to take care of it. Stopping the habit is usually the first step when treating trichotillomania. You can start by focusing on learning about your triggers, such as stress, boredom, or anxiety that lead to the hair pulling, and then substituting the pulling behavior for something else. For example, some sufferers find that when they feel the urge to pull their hair, they focus that urge on another activity like snapping a rubber band around their wrist or squeezing a stress ball. Keeping track of your hair pulling episodes and writing them down in a journal is also a great way to figure out what triggers you. When I work with people with body-focused repetitive behaviors, that's the first thing I do. I say, all right, so where is the location that you usually do this behavior? What time of day do you usually do this behavior? I had another client who only did it in front of her laptop because a lot of her stress was related to work. She started wearing a buff on her head. It's really tight, so you can't really get in there with your fingers. She started wearing a buff whenever she sat down to her laptop because having a physical barrier also keeps you from going completely unconscious, engaging in this behavior. I had another client who worked as a cashier. She put rubber bands around her belt loops. She couldn't get her hands above mid-waist. She could run the cash register, but she couldn't get her hands all the way to her head.
And that worked for her. I'm sure that looked super normal.
I think when you've pulled all your hair out, you stopped worrying about what looks normal to other people.
I suppose you're right. My friend Amy Miller has just posted that she got off stage last night and realized that she had a small piece of toilet paper on her face. She's having perimenopause and had a hot flash and was dabbing at sweat. No one told me about it. I did my whole set with it on my face. I love being looked at as part of my job. Thumbs up for being a woman.
Turns out it works out pretty great all the time. In my career, I have never had a male client who is struggling with trichotillomania.
I'm sure that for men, there's so much more shame in pulling your hair or playing with your hair, that it's a self-solving problem. I think because women can be appearing to be flirtatious or fun, twirling their hair, playing with their hair, and also we're better at keeping a secret. I think that society unwittingly promote that kind of behavior. Trait anger, anger expression, and anger control in trichotillomania, evidence for the emotion regulation model. Individuals with trick reported significantly larger decreases in anger while pulling. In one recent internet study, researchers found that self-identified hair pullers had a harder time, quote, snapping out, unquote, of negative emotional states, such as anger, than non-pullers. Furthermore, they found that self-reported inability to control or, quote, snap out of negative emotions was positively correlated with hair pulling severity. Therefore, these findings suggest that individuals with trick have a harder time controlling their emotions. If this is your tool to regulate your emotions, you don't have any other self-soothing tools. I don't know if being unable to control your emotions causes trick, or people who have trick have not developed other ways.
I think it's both. You're saying earlier that men are not going to be as likely to fiddle with their hair because it's considered effeminate. I think also men are fully allowed to express their anger in as many ways as they want to. That's another piece of the puzzle. If you're repressing emotions all day long and you just kind of want to check out, this is a really excellent way to do it.
I was talking to a friend who is leaving a relationship because of anger stuff. I said, I do have empathy for men because the only socially acceptable emotion you can have is anger. They will shift other feelings to anger because they're not allowed to feel embarrassed and they're not allowed to feel ashamed and they're not allowed to feel self-conscious. They'll just move it over to anger. On women's side, we're not allowed to feel anger, so we have to move those feelings over to other things. And I guess that self-destructive OCD behavior is one.
It's one of the options. There's a few. Most of them aren't very good. Circling back to the article, is twirling your hair as a habit a symptom of an underlying condition? She says, Kathryn Watson, how to stop twirling your hair. Here are some ways to stop twirling. Busy your hands with something constructive like knitting or crocheting. Brush your hair instead of twirling it. Take good care of your hair to decrease the desire to pull it. And also learn alternative stress relief techniques like mindfulness or meditation.
Speak to a psychologist to find if cognitive behavioral therapy. Create small goals, such as not twirling your hair for 2 hours at a time, and reward yourself for meeting them. And you can reward yourself with something small, like buying yourself a new pair of shoes, or something big like heroin. Sleep wearing a baseball cap, beanie, or hoodie to avoid twirling while you sleep. This is also a great fashion look. Consider anti-anxiety medication. Reduce your caffeine and sugar intake. I find that this has been a game changer for my own anxiety. On Halloween, I ate so much candy. It was proof for my own theory because I was crawling out of my skin with anxiety. I really need to stop doing this to myself.
Going back to it sounds like Kathryn agrees with me that having a barrier to your hair is a good idea. So that's why wearing a beanie or a baseball cap to bed, maybe. I was thinking, what about one of those silk caps to bed? Wear a bonnet to bed. Then you'll wake up with refreshed hair and you'll have all of it still. I think reducing your caffeine and sugar intake, that's a tough pill to swallow for most American women. I do strongly agree with the idea of getting on an anti-anxiety medication because I do feel like this is just a living example of anxiety. I remember I had a client in the past who told me about going on this girls' trip for a week and she didn't twirl once. And then on the car ride home, she's starting to think about going back to work. And suddenly her arm was right up there in her hair again.
I guess it's good to know what your triggers are.
And also having a plan in place so that it's not relying on you to be in a good spot in the moment. With men, I experienced mostly nail biting or skin picking. But I remember a client that I had, we were talking about what were your recent triggers? And he was at an opera. And I said, so take me back. You find your seat. You're looking at the program.
Get a glass of wine. What is so stressful about
this?
Right.
What happened? And he said, as he was sitting down, his phone lit up with a text from his boss. So it wasn't the opera. It was the text from his boss.
I got to tell you, out of all the things you need to avoid, the opera is the easiest one.
I don't find myself being pushed into opera heavy situations on a very regular basis.
Sorry, babe. You know I can't go to the opera. I'll pick my face.
Sharon, if you're thinking about medicating your trick, here are some things that might be helpful. This is from the Mayo Clinic again. Medications that may treat either on their own or in combination with another medication, your TTM. Antidepressants, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, commonly referred to as SSRIs, and tricyclic antidepressants can sometimes help with reducing the impulse to pull hair. Antipsychotics, these medications can help balance your brain chemistry. While the name sounds like they have only one use, they're actually helpful in treating lots of conditions, including dementia, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. Anticonvulsants, these medications typically help treat seizures and other disorders that affect muscle movements, but can also help with TTM. And then finally, nutraceuticals. These are nutrition products like amino acid supplements that can help to treat medical conditions.
That's super interesting.
Yeah, it's the brain stuff.
As a very wise woman once said, it's the brain stuff.
I think the reason why this issue is so challenging is that there are lots of different things at play. Part of it is your genetic combos, whatever's going on with your brain. Part of it is your trauma history. If this woman is a listener to our show, I'm assuming she has a pretty complicated trauma history.
That's why you're here.
So trauma history, coping strategies that have worked for you. I think it's also important to realize, because this is what people always say to me. They go, I don't know why I do this. Because it works. This thing relieves your symptoms, however, temporarily, and then creates all these other horrible symptoms that you have to deal with. In that moment, it's something that suits you. It's something that calms you. And so you keep coming back to it.
The first time you did it, your brain said, oh, this feels better. Now that's your tool. And you just do it again and again. So do you feel that you can irresponsibly diagnose Sharon as having OCD? How can Sharon determine whether this is an OCD symptom?
I'm going to go ahead and just assume that it is. Because the thing you're doing, you have this sort of bloody mindedness, as the Brits would say. You can't really seem to stop yourself. It's something that you're doing for 5 hours a day. That feels like something you don't really have much control over. And from the feedback that I hear from all of my clients for these different body-focused repetitive behaviors, almost all of them have OCD as well. It's the idea that I'm going to perfect something. A lot of times what I'll hear about with Trick is I found a hair that was different from the other hairs. I've got to pull it out to make it all even, which is an OCD thing, right? Or I found a little bump on my skin that's different, and so I have to clean it up real quick. Or I have a little weird tag on my finger that I need to pull off real quick. And then you end up tearing your whole hand off.
On the topic of addiction, and especially caffeine, at that same convention that I was at this week, they had a little espresso bar. And in the afternoon, I was walking past and there were 40 people in line for the little espresso bar. And I had feelings of superiority because that would have been me 3 years ago. Just get yourself on an SSRI.
I was recently on a cruise and every morning I went and got my chai. And there was also a very long line at the Starbucks.
Laura has never been a coffee drinker. She doesn't understand the pain and trauma of doing it.
I used to be a coffee drinker when I was in high school. I just had really, really terrible stomach problems. So I stopped.
See, that's something I never knew.
As my father used to say, fun fact to know and tell. So Virginia, what are your final thoughts on this very interesting topic that Sharon has brought to us?
My final thoughts are what interesting little creatures we are to have developed all of these myriad ways to cope with our own stress and anxiety, but they're all the same way. They're all having to do with self-soothing and with regulating our emotions. Thank you for bringing it to us. I'm shocked to hear that it's 1 out of 50 people at some point have said, I've pulled out my hair to feel better, because it feels much more unusual than that to me. But I'm thinking good thoughts about you, Sharon. I want you to take Laura's confidence that you can change this behavior and improve your life. And I believe that you can. Laura, what are your final thoughts?
Trichotillomania is my bread and butter. It's something that I work on a pretty regular basis.
Trichotillomania, smoking, overeating,
Body-focused repetitive behaviors, nail picking, nail biting, all the nail things, skin picking.
If you pick your skin or hair and you live in Texas, you can find Laura and her professional website at lauraryan.org.
When it comes to hypnosis specifically, the things that I think hypnosis works best with are compulsive behaviors and phobias. Those are the two things it's the easiest to treat. If you have a flying phobia, if you're afraid of sharks, if you're afraid of balloons, I had that once.
You're afraid of opossums. That's not her. She can't help you.
Don't call me. I will tell you, if you see an opossum, just shoot
Run.
it right between the eyes. So final thoughts. This is something that I have a lot of passion and interest in. The thing for me is I see these poor women who have just feel completely devastated in life, and I'm able to help them grow their eyelashes back. I love eyelashes and eyebrows the best because they grow really fast. The hair on the top of the head takes a really long time. The things that I learned were the origin of Trichotillomania, because I didn't realize it was Greek and it's hair pull mania. And learning a lot about the medications. I didn't realize that you could take an anticonvulsant and that could help you.
Right, that's wild.
With your trick. Yeah, it's amazing. I also didn't realize that a lot of these behaviors are grooming behavior.
And if you're pulling ticks out of your hair and eating them, that's totally normal, but also figure out why there's ticks in your hair.
To be real, all of this is totally normal. If it's 1 in 50, then that's most people, especially if you're a woman. I feel like it's more than 1 in 50. So Virginia, if anyone wants to stop pulling their hair and start going to stand-up comedy, how would they find out about your career?
You can find me at www.badinia.com. My TikTok is Badinia and my Instagram is also Badinia. I need to record another album, but if you are interested in my first album, Gothic American, it is available on Apple and Bandcamp for free. And you can also find it on YouTube for free. And I don't mind if you do. If you're interested in hiring us to promote vegetarian foods, sparkle waters, massage therapy, I would do a massage place.
Apartment finders
or electric cars, please reach us at hireus@mysistersatherapist.com. If you have a question, a podcast idea, as we've just had, or a compliment for the show, you can reach us at hello@mysistersatherapist.com. Laura, where can people find you on the internet apart from your professional website, lauraryan.org?
If you want to find my very unprofessional TikTok account, where you can see all of my incredible AI creations, just find me at I am Laura Ryan on TikTok. You can also follow our Instagram account, My Sister's a Therapist Instagram. If you want to go to our website, you can find us at mysistersatherapist.com.
Laura, now is the time of the show where you sometimes read us a nice comment or email or a review that you have received. And if anyone wants to send us a review, you can put it on Audible, on Apple Podcasts, or on Spotify. Do you have one to share this week?
Yes, in fact, I do. I have an email from Katie Bowman, our super fan.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, Katie. Hello, hello, hello. I just listened to your episode about grief, and it says how you guys send people messages when you want to share nice things with them. And I thought, I do that all the time. And I want to give you one today because I love your podcast so much. I know I say it all the time. I just remember hearing Virginia on a PYT pod, and I was like, this is such a funny biatch. And I thought I'd be friends with her. I just think the world of you both. I look up to Virginia and all of her advice for comedians. And the fact that you have this awesome podcast is even more incredible. So I'm constantly amazed by both of you. And I hope this message finds you well. So much love, Katie Bowman. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie. Your email is going to let us keep on striving another day.
You're warming the cockles of our cold, dead hearts.
Other people who warm the cockles are our spiritual leader, Billy Ray Valentine, Capricorn. As he said, we can make it, baby.
Me and you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.